Before you scroll past this video, you need to hear what went down last night on SmackDown because the wrestling world is exploding right now and mainstream media is completely silent about it. Bronson Reed, the absolute monster who's been terrorizing Monday Night Raw for months, just walked out on the Vision. And I'm not talking about a storyline walkout, I'm talking about a real backstage confrontation with Brock Lesnar that has WWE scrambling to do damage control as we speak. If you think you know what happened, trust me, you don't. The dirt sheets got it wrong, social media got it wrong, and by the end of this video, you're going to understand why this might be the biggest backstage incident since the CM Punk saga. I'm calling this right now. This changes everything for WrestleMania season, and I've got receipts, insider information, and timeline breakdowns that will blow your mind. Hello viewers, if you're new here, please don't forget to like and hit the subscribe button for daily updates on WWE Raw. Let's get into this. The setup, the Vision's dominance. Alright, before we get into the nuclear explosion that happened backstage, we need to understand what the Vision actually was and why Bronson Reed leaving is such a catastrophic event. For those who might be casual fans or just tuning in, the Vision was supposed to be WWE's answer to the Bloodline. We're talking about a dominant faction led by some of the most physically imposing athletes on the roster. Bronson Reed wasn't just a member, he was the enforcer, the 330-pound wrecking ball from Australia who made his name by putting Seth Rollins through announce tables not once, not twice, but multiple times. This man went from being released by WWE in 2021 to becoming one of the most feared competitors in the company. His tsunami splash, his sheer power, his ability to move like a cruiserweight despite being built like a tank, all of it made him essential to the Vision's intimidation factor. The Vision was positioned to run roughshod over SmackDown. They had the muscle, they had the momentum, and they had WWE's full backing with premium spots on every major show. Bronson Reed was getting the push of his life, main event programs, featured matches at premium live events, and rumored plans for a singles championship run by summer. So why on God's green earth would he walk away from all of that? Here's where it gets interesting and infuriating, and this is why you need to pay attention, because what I'm about to tell you exposes some ugly truths about how WWE still operates in 2025. Over the past month, there have been whispers, okay? Backstage murmurs that certain veterans weren't happy with how the Vision was being booked. Names were being thrown around, legends who felt like this new faction was getting opportunities that they never had. But one name kept coming up in these conversations more than any other: Brock Lesnar. Now, before some of you start typing, Brock wasn't even on SmackDown lately, let me stop you right there. Brock has been in and out of WWE TV, but he's always been in the building. He's always been in in Triple H's ear, Paul Levesque's ear about booking decisions, about who's getting pushed, and about who he thinks deserves to be in certain positions. And according to multiple sources that I've verified, Brock Lesnar has not been happy about the Vision's push. The confrontation, what really happened. Let's get to what actually went down last Tuesday night before SmackDown went live. Bronson Reed arrived at the arena around 3 p.m., standard call time for most talent. He's got his bag, he's ready to work, and he's scheduled for a backstage segment with the rest of the Vision, where they're supposed to cut a promo about their upcoming title match at the next premium live event. Everything seems normal. Reed goes through makeup, gets his gear ready, runs through his lines with the other members. This is routine stuff. But then, around 5:30 p.m., about 2.5 hours before showtime, Bronson gets called into a production meeting. Now, here's where accounts start to differ, but I'm going to give you the version that I've been able to confirm through 3 separate sources who were either in the room or right outside when things escalated. Bronson walks into this production meeting expecting to discuss camera angles and timing for his segment. Instead, he finds Brock Lesnar sitting there with several producers and one of the head writers. No Triple H, no Nick Khan, just Brock and a handful of mid-level decision-makers. Immediately, red flags, right? Because why would Brock Lesnar, who's not even scheduled for this episode of SmackDown, be in a production meeting about the Vision segment? According to my sources, Brock immediately starts questioning the direction of the Vision storyline. He's asking why they're getting so much TV time. He's asking why Bronson specifically is being positioned as this unstoppable force when he's barely been back in WWE for 2 years. Those are reportedly Brock's words, not mine. Bronson, to his credit, tries to keep things professional. He explains that he's just following the creative that's been given to him. He's not out there politicking for more time. He's not demanding main event spots. He's literally just doing what he's told to do by the people who hire him. But here's where it gets spicy. Brock apparently responds with something along the lines of, well, maybe creative doesn't know what they're doing. Maybe they need someone with experience to guide these decisions. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is when the temperature in that room went from warm to volcanic. One of my sources, and this person was literally standing outside the door, told me they heard Bronson's voice get louder, not yelling, but definitely elevated. He apparently said something like, "With all due respect, I'm not going to sit here and be lectured about earning my spot by someone who shows up 4 times a year." Oh my God. Can you imagine the tension in that room? We're talking about Bronson Reed, who, yes, is a big man and an intimidating presence, but we're also talking about Brock Lesnar, the beast incarnate, the man who legitimately competed in UFC, the guy who once picked up and threw a car door across a parking lot, according to WWE legend and lore. My sources say that Brock stood up at this point, just stood up, didn't say anything, didn't move toward Bronson, just stood up. And that action alone, that silent intimidation tactic, that's when producers in the room started getting between them. But here's the thing that nobody's talking about. Here's the part that makes me absolutely furious with how this situation was handled. Not a single person in that room, not one producer, not one writer, told Brock Lesnar that he was out of line for being in that meeting in the first place. Think about that for a second. Bronson Reed is a contracted performer who's scheduled to work that night, following creative direction that's been approved by management, and he gets ambushed in a production meeting by a part-time talent who's not even on that night's show, and no one steps in to say, "Hey Brock, maybe this isn't the appropriate time or place for this." That's absolutely insane to me, and it should be insane to you too. So what happens next? Bronson apparently looks around the room, sees that no one is going to back him up or shut down this conversation, and he makes a decision right there on the spot. He walks out. Not just out of the production meeting, out of the building entirely. My sources tell me that Bronson went straight to his car, loaded his gear, and drove away from the arena. This is about 6 p.m. now, 2 hours before SmackDown goes live, and one of the featured members of the Vision just left the building. Panic immediately sets in backstage. Producers are frantically trying to call Bronson. Other members of the Vision are confused because they don't know what happened. Someone has to go tell them that Bronson's not there, and they need to rewrite the entire segment on the fly. And you know what happens with Brock? According to people who were there, he just goes to catering, grabs some food, acts like nothing happened. The fallout, WWE's scramble mode. So now WWE is in full damage control mode. They've got a live show starting in less than 2 hours, they've got a major storyline that suddenly needs to be rewritten, and they've got a situation where one of their rising stars just walked out after a confrontation with their biggest part-time attraction. What do? First thing, they try to downplay it internally. There are apparently multiple group chats and text chains where producers and management are telling talent, "Don't talk about this, don't post about this is being handled." But here's the problem with the modern era of wrestling. You can't contain this stuff anymore. Too many people have phones, too many people have connections to journalists and podcasters, too many people have Twitter accounts where they can just subtly hint at things without explicitly breaking any NDAs. By 7 p.m., so an hour before SmackDown goes live, there are already whispers starting to hit social media. Nothing concrete, just vague posts like, "Interesting energy at the arena tonight," and "Big meeting happening backstage." Fans aren't stupid, they know something's up. The show goes on, obviously, they have to air the show, but the Vision segment gets completely reworked. Instead of the planned promo with all members, they do a pre-taped video package that was supposed to air later in the night, and they just have the remaining members do a shortened backstage interview without Bronson. The announcers don't acknowledge his absence directly, but if you were paying attention, Michael Cole made a very deliberate point of saying the Vision was dealing with internal discussions about their upcoming match. That's not normal wrestling speak for a heel faction that's supposed to look dominant and unified. Meanwhile, Bronson Reed is reportedly at home, phone blowing up with messages from wrestlers checking on him, management trying to smooth things over, and even some veterans reaching out to see if he's okay. But here's what makes this situation go from bad to nuclear. The next day, Wednesday, there are reports that WWE is trying to spin this as Bronson having a personal emergency that required him to leave the arena. They're putting out feelers to their friendly journalists to write stories about how there's no heat and everything is being worked out professionally. And then, Bronson Reed does something that I think is absolutely brilliant, but also incredibly risky for his career. He posts on social media. Now, he doesn't explicitly say what happened. He's not stupid. He knows he's under contract. He knows he can be fined or suspended for talking about internal business. But what he does post is a picture of himself from his NXT days with the caption, "Never forget where you came from or who you had to become to survive." That's it. That's the